Greetings and welcome. Today's class is to get you guys introduced in the new play from William Shakespeare that we're going to be covering, Hamlet. I want you guys to go back to the previous discussion that we had on Macbeth, the tragedy of Macbeth. As we know, Hamlet is a tragic hero. Therefore, what connections can we bring out from the play Macbeth and what we're probably going to see in the play Hamlet? What can we infer from that play of Macbeth and how can be connected to Hamlet? Out of the things that we could bring out, what is one of them that we could bring out of both plays in this case? We're going to have a tragic hero. It's very important to pinpoint a tragic hero. And to have a tragic hero, what do we have? What do we need to have for us to have a tragic hero? We have to have a downfall. In Macbeth, inevitably we're gonna have the downfall of Macbeth by being killed by Macduff, and therefore we're gonna have a new king. The king of Scotland in this case is gonna be Malcolm. In the case of Hamlet, we're gonna have a very curious scenario. Uh, we have a Hamlet that is alive or dead. The Prince Hamlet, it's alive, but the father of Hamlet is dead. There's a huge problem in the early stages of this play, and it's going to be that the dad of Hamlet will be murdered. The goal for the first couple of minutes here is to infer on the way of how he died, and in this case, if it was dead by a pandemic, a regular disease, if he was murdered, if it was an accident, what's the scenario that we have with Hamlet, with Daddy Hamlet per se. And it's very important that you go to your notes and ask several questions. Number one, what's the scenario in Denmark in the early stages of our play? That's number one. Number two, how will the ruling of Denmark grow from now on? That we know that the king of Denmark is dead. How will this scenario, this is question number three, how will this scenario affect Hamlet? And we could add up a fourth one. How can this scenario, the death of King Hamlet, can affect the people from Denmark? That's important to outline because we're going to have an effect. Someone has to um, take the throne, and that is something that we need to analyze. How will this happen? Remember, we're in a monarchy, therefore, automatically the throne is going to go to Hamlet because his dad is um, dead. So let's see how of the evolution of this play takes us to see if indeed Hamlet will become the king of Denmark. Another thing that we need to point out, how many acts does every play from Shakespeare has? That's important to pinpoint. How many scenes we're going to have in the plays of Shakespeare? Is that um, always the same? Does it change from play to play? Does every single act have to have the same kind of, not the same kind, the same amount of scenes? Does that happen? Or can it vary from act to act and from play to play? The amount of scenes that we have on every single act per se. Very important three things that we need to point out from a leader. Three things that we need to point out, and we cover that in Macbeth. Also, we cover that in the Greek tragedies, in this case in Oedipus Rex and also in Antigone. Three things that a good leader must have. Number one, ethos. He has to be ethical. What is the second one that a good leader has to have? Anyone could tell me. We have ethos. What else? It just starts with a P. Pathos. Very good. And what would be the third one? We have ethos, pathos. When we make wise decisions, when the decisions as a leader are wise decisions, what is that called? Logos. Very good. So we have ethos, pathos, and logos. Those three things are hypercritical here to have a good leader. Now, also in your notes, highlight or answer in this case, does Hamlet have any of these characteristics? Is he ethical? Does he make wise decisions? And does he has pity for his people? This is very important because the people from the town, they're gonna identify if you as a leader have these characteristics. If not, they could probably start calling you a tyrant, and we saw that in Macbeth. Macbeth at the beginning of the play of Act One, we're gonna see a Macbeth that is um, a vertical guy, a guy that made wise decisions, a guy that was proactive for the country. But later on, that prediction of the witches changed the whole complexion of Macbeth and made Macbeth into doing things that he wasn't supposed to do. We know that he killed King Duncan to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish, and that's to obtain the throne. In this case, we have the case of Hamlet. We have the father of Hamlet um, dead in the early stages. What is Hamlet going to do? It is another question. Is Hamlet, um, does Hamlet have something to do with the death of his dad? It could be another um, question that could come into mind as we move along. Now, another of the things that is very important, and another of the texts that we cover, the Morals of the Prince from Niccolo Machiavelli. He had a lot of connections with Macbeth. He had a lot of connections with the things that he did as a leader, the things that he didn't do as a leader. Very important for you guys to ask yourselves, is the morals of the prince apply to Hamlet too? That's something that we need to connect. We have Shakespeare who wrote both plays, so we're gonna have connections between those two plays. So very important, the questions of ethos, pathos, and logos, and not only the questions that were brought out in the lecture. Also ask yourself questions that you could bring into mind for next class. Any other suggestions, any other doubts that you could have in class. Remember, this video is done as a what? As a flip classroom. Therefore, tomorrow in class, what we're going to do is we're going to clear the doubts um, that you guys might have after watching the video, and also the doubts that you guys might have after reading Act 1 of Hamlet. So all of those doubts, we're going to cover them tomorrow. We're going to clear those doubts. So we have everything in store then to move to Act 2. If we still have doubts start coming into picture, then we cannot move forward to Act 2. So that's the introductory video for the tragedy of Macbeth. Write down your questions, write down your concerns, and we're going to cover that tomorrow in class. I will have a wonderful evening.